Srimate Jayapataka Swaminiti Namine. Nama Acharya Padaya Nitaik. Gaura Brinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ukam Karoti Bachalam, Angum Langa. Online world. We are in chapter 4 of the uh, Prabhupada Leela. Chapter 4.
Summer in
Montreal. So 59. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. Okay, Indulekha Mataji, you want to read?
No, sorry, Prabhu, I'm traveling, so I would be able to.
Fine, no worries. So, Krishna Chandra Prabhu, Leelamai Rukmini Mataji, any of you want to read?
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Okay.
In Montreal, June 3rd, 1968, in Montreal, Prabhupada often sang a Sanskrit prayer composed by great Vaishnava King Kulashekara. While walking around his room, sitting at his desk, or roaming through the house, he would sing to himself and the others would hear him. He would chant it. It is a Sanskrit mantra, but to the tune of his own in a voice that dropped to a deep, low tone at the end of a line. Krishna Tadiya Pada Pankaja Pancharatam Advaya Me Visata Manasa Raja Amsa Prana Prayana Samaye Kapha Vata Pita Kantavodarana Vida Smarana Kutuste. In India, almost 20 years ago, Prabhupada had translated and written commentary on this and several other verses. The prayers of King Kulashekara for his Back to Godhead newspaper. Now, during the summer of 1968, while still recovering from his heart attack of a year ago, he sang this particular verse often, and several times he explained its meaning to the devotees gathered in his room in the evening. Swans have a proclivity to stick their long necks underwater and wrap them around the stem of the lotus flower. So King Kulashekara is praying, my dear Krishna, may the swan of my mind enter the network of the stem of your lotus feet. He is praying to do so now at the present moment while he is healthy and can chant Hare Krishna and entangle his mind in Krishna thought. in Krishna thought. Therefore, King Kulushekhara wishes that he may die immediately because he fears that if he waits until later, when the time of death comes, he will be choking. The elements of his body will be disturbed, and there will be a death rattle like ga ga. How will it be possible then to remember Krishna? Prabhupada's health, however, had improved, rising early, dictating Srimad Bhagavatam, going for morning walks, taking full lunch. He was the healthiest he had been in months. After lunch, he would nap. At least he would try, although many of the floorboards in the house would squeak loudly when stepped on. Later in the afternoon, he would often ask for watermelon or cantaloupe. And in the evening, either he would meet with devotees in his room or go to the temple for kirtan and a lecture. After returning at night, he would call for that puffed rice set. Puffed rice, fried peanuts, fried potatoes, and slices of cucumber. So Prabhupada was well, yet more than once he remarked to his servant, if I become sick, do not take me to the hospital. Simply let me chant Hare Krishna and die. The summer of 1968 was a relaxed time without many outside engagements. Prabhupada would spend most of his time in his apartment on Prince Arthur Street, a 5-minute walk from the temple. In his room, he would often meet with disciples visiting from various centers in the United States. Sometimes he would sit in a chair on the front lawn, speaking to visitors, or in the later morning, sit out back in the driveway while Gaurasundra massaged him. One day, while Prabhupada sat in the warm, late morning sun, some of his disciples came and sat on the ground at his feet. The sunshine is so powerful, Prabhupada explained. There are planets where the trees are miles tall, just being supported by the sunshine. And all the planets are supported by the sunshine. It is so powerful. One of Prabhupada's reasons for coming to Canada was to get permanent residency status in both Canada and United States. While in Boston, he had received an order of denial from Immigration Department directing him to leave the country. For the past 3 years, except for 6 months in India, Prabhupada had managed to extend his stay in the US by extending his temporary visa. But now, on a technicality, he had been denied permanent residency. From Montreal, he wrote the district director of the US Immigration in Boston. In your order of denial, you have clearly mentioned in paragraph 4 that your denial order was not on the basis of my qualification of religious minister, but on your discretion for the reason that I submitted my application just after a fortnight of my arrival in the USA. And as such, I was not a bona fide immigrant. I did not know what was the technical mistake on my part in this connection, but I honestly submitted the application after consulting your Calcutta American Consult and our Indian Embassy in Washington, D.C. And I have their letters of confirmation with me. In your notice of denial on May 3rd, 1968, you have mentioned that there is no appeal for this decision. As such, I did not prefer to appeal in this decision, but I left the USA as per your direction. Now I'm simply requesting you to give me your valued direction and what to do next. Brahmananda wrote Prabhupada from New York explaining his plan to get a lawyer and to appeal. But Prabhupada, now skeptical of US lawyers, took money and resolved nothing, chose instead to make a new application as religious minister for ISKCON. Although US immigration had denied his application ostensibly on the grounds that he had been in wrong immigration status, Srila Prabhupada suspected that the State Department was not overly fond of Indian Swamis. I understand that the government of the USA is disgusted with the so-called Swamis because they have exploited the people in so many ways. That is a fact. And if I would have been in the government, I would have also considered like that. So they have not got a very good opinion about these rascal Swamis. Under the circumstances, it will be difficult to get me admitted as a Swami, although I'm not a Swami of the rascal group. But we have to prove it by action that this Swami is not like those Swamis. This remark was made by Mr. Alan Burke of the television company. He introduced me to the public as he is a real Swami, and he showed me all respectful compliments. Anyway, I'm not after respectful compliments by the public, but I'm concerned more about my disciples. I want to see them quite able to preach this sublime doctrine of Krishna consciousness, and therefore I wish to stay. Otherwise, I'm not attracted for any place, either hell or heaven. Prabhupada accepted the denial of permanent residency in the United States as Krishna's desire and blessing. Now, instead of returning to the US, he would go to London and the European continent. Mukunda, Shamashunda, and other disciples in San Francisco had asked Prabhupada if they could open a center in London, and on June 7, Prabhupada replied, "As a sannyasi, I should not fix up at a certain place and take your service comfortably. It is not the desire of Krishna. He wants me traveling throughout the whole western part of the world. And therefore, I think it is Krishna's desire that now I shall start my activities at least for some time in the European countries. So it's almost certain that I'm going to London by month of August. And if you all wish to come there, then you can prepare for the trip." Prabhupada's plan was to travel and preach with a party of devotees who would support themselves by distributing Krishna conscious literature. But as Shamashunda was already building a cart for the second annual Radhayatra festival in San Francisco, and as his wife was pregnant, Prabhupada advised him to wait. After the Radhayatra festival and after his wife had delivered a baby and taken a month's rest, Shamashunda and his family could go to England. Prabhupada asked that Mukunda also go. "I shall go to England for the time being," Prabhupada wrote Mukunda, "and start a center there which is long overdue." But more important than traveling or obtaining permanent residency in the US was the publication of Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada felt that writing and printing books was his best contribution in executing his spiritual master's order. So when Brahmananda came to Montreal from New York with the printer's gallery proofs of Bhagavad Gita and teachings of Lord Caitanya, Prabhupada was very pleased. Macmillan Company was publishing Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada himself was publishing teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Dai Nippon in Japan. Because Brahmananda had contacted the editors at Macmillan Company, Prabhupada credited with the success of the Gitas being published by such a famous company. Brahmananda was also Prabhupada's man for dealing with Dai Nippon. Both books were on tight printing schedules, and Brahmananda had to return quickly to New York with the corrected proofs. Brahmananda, I came up to show Prabhupada the gallery proofs for both teachings of Lord Chaitanya and Bhagavad Gita as it is. I just happened to have both galley proofs that had arrived. So it was a wonderful thing to bring these galley proofs to Prabhupada for checking. I was there only for a few days, maybe a weekend or so. Prabhupada personally read through the entire galleys and made notations in his own hand. He did the proofreading of the galleys. Everything was done by Srila Prabhupada. It was very personal kind of things. Of course, that gave Prabhupada great pleasure because he wanted his books published, and we had started to do it. So Prabhupada took great pleasure in proofreading those galleys, and he handed them to me, and it was very wonderful. When one of my books is published, Prabhupada said, I feel like I have conquered an empire. Having books in print gave meaning to Prabhupada's fight for US residency. And only with these books published could he tour Europe. Krishna consciousness literature was a solid evidence that his movement was not a concocted fly-by-night yogi's dream. Let the government leaders and scholars read these books. Let the student community read them. Any intelligent man would be impressed. These books were the most enduring glorification of Krishna and the most powerful propaganda for spreading Krishna's teachings throughout the world. Far from being the speculations of an ordinary conditioned soul subject to mistakes and cheating, these books contained the teachings and activities of Lord Krishna, the science of Krishna consciousness passed down by the great acharyas. They were books of perfect knowledge. Before Brahmananda left Montreal, Prabhupada asked him to send a Srimad Bhagavatam second and third canto manuscript from the closet in his New York apartment. By October, as soon as teachings of Lord Chaitanya was printed, he would have the manuscripts ready for Dai Nippon. Speaking to Brahmananda and others in his room, Prabhupada charged them with the organization of book sales. There would be no scarcity of books, but his disciples would have to sell them. When Prabhupada had been alone in India, he had printed, gathered statements from scholars, advertised, and distributed his books. But now he is depending on his disciples. They recognized the importance of his book, but they had no ideas or means for distributing them. Prabhupada assured them, however, that applying his instruction and trusting in Krishna for results, they would be successful. Prabhupada and Brahmananda discussed plans for starting their own printing press, perhaps in Montreal. With the cost of printing so high, Prabhupada wanted some of his disciples to learn the techniques of book publication. He suggested that one of his disciples in New York learn to run a press, and some of the girls learn to compose style. Thus, in the future, he might be able to start his own press in some convenient location. Despite Prabhupada's plan for preaching in Europe, obtaining permanent residency in the United States and Canada, printing his books and starting a press, his life remained regulated and simple. He would give Srimad Bhagavatam lectures in the temple, daily see guests in his room, constantly thinking, writing, chanting, and speaking about Krishna, how to spread Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was the driving force of a revolutionary movement. Yet he mostly stayed at home, spending much of his time alone in simple domestic dealings with his servants. One quiet afternoon in Prabhupada's sitting room, Govinda Dasi was bringing Prabhupada his prasadam when Prabhupada spied a baby rat running across the floor. Immediately, Govinda Dasi set the tray of prasadam down and tried to catch the rat as it darted toward Prabhupada's desk. Getting up quickly from his seat, Prabhupada also joined excitedly in the chase. Then another rat appeared. When Harinam, visiting from San Francisco, heard the commotion, he came to the door and offered to help. Taking up a shoebox, he began chasing the rats, finally catching them both and letting them loose outside. Later, Prabhupada walked into the room where Guru Sundar and Govinda Dasi were working and told him, if you kept everything very clean, these rats wouldn't come. If someone is very attached to his dwelling, then he may take his next birth in that dwelling as a cockroach or a rat. These are sinful living entities, and they are taking their birth because of that attachment. He then asked Sevananda to seal up the cracks in the floor. Sometimes when Prabhupada criticized Govinda Dasi for her mistake, she would take it very emotionally, go into the bathroom and cry. One night while cooking Prabhupada's puffed rice set, Govinda Dasi made the peanuts too dark. Why are these peanuts black? Prabhupada asked, and she served him his prasadam. Why have you made them black? When Govinda Dasi began to cry, Prabhupada criticized her all the more. Why are you crying? You are crying because you are angry. Why have you done this? His stern and angry looks made her tears come even harder. I'm not angry, she sobbed. I'm very sorry I made the peanuts too dark. Once Govinda Dasi lent the dictating machine to a god sister who broke it, and Prabhupada became disgusted. You American boys and girls, you're a rich man's sons, so you simply think you can break something and then throw in the street and buy a new one. You do not take care of such things. Only one person should use a machine. You should have not allowed her to use it. These words devastated Govinda Dasi, and she retired to cry for a while. But she soon recovered and Prabhupada acted if the scene had never taken place. Govinda Dasi took the chastisement as a test of her sincerity, and she had learned that Prabhupada's thunderbolts were generally followed by his usual kindness and gentleness. Prabhupada rarely went anywhere alone. For his disciples, it was unthinkable that he should go somewhere without one of them accompanying him to care for his needs or to confront whatever difficulties might arise. When one afternoon Govinda Dasi looked in Prabhupada's room and found him gone, she became perplexed. Seeing that his shoes were gone, she ran out to the street. Unable to see him in either direction, she ran down to the corner where she saw him in the distance walking away. When she finally caught up to him, she asked in a voice distraught and breathless, "Where are you going? Why have you left?" Prabhupada laughed quietly as he was walked erect with his cane, his movements flowing. "Oh," he said, "I am just going to the bank. It's all right, I'll be back." Govinda Dasi apologized for being so demanding. "I just thought that you shouldn't go alone because you have been ill." Prabhupada snapped back, "What do you know? Physicians heal thyself." And he walked on, leaving Govinda Dasi behind. As far as Prabhupada was concerned, it was Govinda Dasi who was sickly, not he. She was always bundled in sweaters and coats or blowing her nose. Once he had gone into the room where she and Guru Sundara worked, and he had been messy with tissues thrown here and there. "This is why you're always getting sick," he said, "because of uncleanliness." Another day, Prabhupada, accompanied by Guru Sundara and Govinda Dasi, was walking out of the house on his way to the temple when he began laughing, saying, "Yes, Govinda Dasi, everything is nice. You're an excellent secretary, an excellent cook, and you're good at everything. Your only disqualification is that you are a woman. But don't worry, next life you shall be a brahmachari." "Thank you, Srila Prabhupada," Govinda Dasi replied, enjoying Prabhupada's joking mood. Guru Sundara was quite a young man, steady in his duties. He liked to study Prabhupada's book and could understand the philosophy. Although negligent about studying Bengali and therefore sometimes unable to translate the verses Prabhupada had assigned, he was a careful servant and Prabhupada was pleased with his work. Often Prabhupada, taking the part of the Mayavadi, would debate with Guru Sundara. Early one morning, Srila Prabhupada walked into the room where Guru Sundara was sleeping and woke him with an argument of Mayavadi philosophy. Krishna's personality must be a product of illusion because the absolute is defined as beyond personality. And Guru Sundara had to immediately refute the argument. Prabhupada would sometimes remark that eventually Guru Sundara and Govinda Dasi should travel together to some part of the world and preach Krishna consciousness had to be introduced to so many places, and Prabhupada envisioned that one day his servant and secretary would go off to open new center. Taking care of my body, he said, is not such an important thing. One day, Prabhupada and Guru Sundara were discussing philosophy while Govinda Dasi spent a long time in the kitchen washing pots and dishes. The noise of her cleaning carried into Prabhupada's room. "She has this cleanliness disease," Prabhupada warned. "My wife and daughter also had it. You should catch it while it's not developed. Otherwise, it will get worse. I caught my daughter once. She was washing the electric socket by splashing water into them, and I told her, do not ever do this again. If you do like this, I will kill you." So she promised she would never do it again. While Prabhupada was in Montreal, many of his disciples from United States came to visit him. They were serving on his behalf, and some of them thousands of miles away, and the urge to see him would grow until it impelled them to travel to Montreal. Sometimes these visitors would be newcomers who had joined one of Prabhupada's temple and had heard about him from his disciples, but had never seen him. Prabhupada was always happy, of course, and his disciples remained in their posts, executing their respective devotees. But he was so glad when they came to visit him. Nanda Kishora, I walked into the room And Srila Prabhupada greeted me very enthusiastically with a smile and said, American Vaishnava. I paid obeisances, sat down, we began to talk. I heard that Krishna could be in the heart of every living entity at the same time. So I asked Prabhupada how it was possible. He began saying, just try to understand. So I tried. I strained. I squinted to show that I was really trying to understand. And Prabhupada continued, just like the sun is over your head and mine is over the head of someone who may be 1,000 miles away. That is because the sun is great. Similarly, Krishna is so great that he is simultaneously in the hearts of all living entities. And I understood, he had said, try to understand. And because I was hearing, I did understand. I was trying to understand, and I was hearing from the pure devotee. As I was leaving his room, he waved his right hand in the air, sitting back in a very relaxed way, smiling. He said, chant Hare Krishna, chant Hare Krishna. Krishna Das. I had heard that Prabhupada was planning to travel abroad and that he wanted to take several devotees with him, and that whoever wanted to go should save his money. So I got a job with a jewelry firm. Then I had a vacation while Prabhupada was in Montreal. Uddhava and I were having our vacation at the same time, and we decided over breakfast one morning to go see Prabhupada in Montreal. In 1 hour, we were packed, wearing suits. We hitchhiked from San Francisco to New York in 3 days. When we got to Montreal, Gorasundra said, well, Prabhupada is about to have lunch. Would you care to join him? He said, yes. Uddhava and I went in, and Prabhupada was immediately very thankful that we had come so far to visit him. But as we had come to lunch so late, there wasn't really enough prasadam for 2 guests. So Gorasundra first served Prabhupada, and we sat there with our empty plates. Then Prabhupada asked, what about their food? Govindadasi went to get something for us. And Prabhupada said to me, you're very thin. You look sickly. You should eat more. So he proceeded to take food off his plate and put it on my empty plate. And he told me to eat. He said I should eat 6 chapatis a day. He gave me a whole diet to follow so I could gain weight. During lunch, a mouse came into the room and Gorasundra captured it. Prabhupada joked about how the mouse had been a devotee in his past life and had come back in this life to eat prasadam off the floor. Afterwards, we paid our obeisances. I touched my head to Prabhupada's foot, and he got up and walked over and rubbed our heads. Jeffrey Hickey, Jagidesha Das. When I entered Prabhupada's apartment, I got the most amazing feeling. Nityananda Maharaj and Hayagriva were there talking to Prabhupada about New Vrindavan. They were saying that they had bought some land and Prabhupada was encouraging them. I just sat in the back and listened to what was going on. Prabhupada's presence was very strong. I felt small and I had the feeling that he knew everything about me and that I couldn't pretend to be someone big. Although previously I had always thought of myself as being a little advanced, but in Prabhupada's presence, I couldn't pose as anything because I understood that he knew everything about me and could understand my mentality. So I just sat with my face turned downwards. Once in a while, I would look up at him. I was in Prabhupada's room for about half an hour. I wanted to say something, but I didn't know what to say. So at the end, and while everyone was leaving, I bowed down and let the others leave first. Then as I was about to leave, I told Prabhupada I was chanting 16 rounds daily and that I was expected to get initiated later. He welcomed me to stay in the Montreal temple and I fumbled some reply. Vaikuntha. I was in great anxiety because I had just returned from my draft board physical. But as soon as I walked into Prabhupada's room, all my anxiety completely melted. As soon as I came into his presence, I thought how wonderful he is. Spiritual truth became real in his presence. Sivananda. I had come to Montreal to visit Prabhupada, But Gaurasundara and Govinda Das didn't want many devotees going with him on the morning walk. One morning, I was out for a walk by myself when I met Prabhupada. He mentioned to me and said, "Come on." As we walked, I mentioned to Prabhupada that I had traveled to various places in Europe, all over America. And he said, "Oh, yes, you must go to these places and open some temples." At that time, the word was out that Prabhupada wanted some of his disciples to go to London to open a temple there. So as I was walking alone with Srila Prabhupada, we were just about to cross the street. Prabhupada turned to me and said, "Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that one who is spreading my teachings of Bhagavad Gita to the devotees is most dear to me, and there's never one who is more dear." Then Prabhupada added, "Our business is to become dear to Krishna." That started me thinking about opening a center somewhere. In the evening, devotees and guests would crowd into Prabhupada's room to sit with him. Gaurasundara and Govinda Dasi would attempt to confine the devotees to Prabhupada's visiting hours, but their restraints were not very strong, and Prabhupada himself would often override them. Prabhupada was more relaxed in his room than in the temple, and he would laugh and speak about many different things. Brahmananda, Prabhupada would just talk. Often there wouldn't be any questions, and he would just get on a topic and talk sitting casually. Sometimes it wouldn't even be directly about Krishna, but he would describe different things about life in India or some other topic. He would always make sure that everyone had some prasadam. One night he was explaining to a visitor that his disciples, these American boys and girls, were taking up Krishna consciousness naturally, not artificially. He referred to his servant, Gaurasundara. "Actually, he is doing so many nice things for me all day long because he loves me. It is not artificial." Govinda Dasi. One time there was an elaborate discussion about whether trains were better than buses or buses were better than trains. Another time Prabhupada was talking about liquor and I said, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, whiskey tastes awful." He was shocked. He said, "Oh, you have tasted. You are surprised that I had tasted liquor." He talked in detail about Bengal tigers and all sort of other things. Also, the devotees were not so astute. Most of us were just recovering from being hippies and taking drugs, but everyone loved him very much. Actually, there was no name and fame. There was no money. There was no position. The center of our service, the motivating factor, was simply love of Srila Prabhupada. Nanda Kishora. Prabhupada explained how he had first seen snow when he had come to America. He said, "One day I looked out the window and I thought, oh, someone had taken lime and thrown it all over. And then I looked up at the sky and thought, oh, they are still throwing." And then he laughed. I could hardly believe he had never seen snow fall before. He was like a child. He said such things so beautifully, like an innocent child. And whatever doubt I had was just wiped away due to the beauty of his expression. Satyabhama. Prabhupada told a story of a man from Calcutta who could tell the make of any car just by hearing. I think Prabhupada was making an important philosophical point, but I forgot the point. Anyway, this man's friend wanted to test the other man's ability to judge cars just by their sound. So together they went and stood on a street corner in Calcutta. The friend blindfolded the other man, and as each car passed by, the man could identify it. That is a Cadillac. That is a Buick. Then a donkey came walking by dragging some tin cans. And the man said, oh, that is a Ford. Krishnadas and Uddhava told Prabhupada about the San Francisco Radhayatra, and they handed him a newspaper clipping. Prabhupada read the headlines loud. S.F. Raiders hail Hindu god Krishna. After noting with pleasure the large photo of devotees pulling the rope of the 2.5-ton wagon on a long haul to celebrate Radhayatra festival, he handed the newspaper back to Krishnadas. Read it. After hearing the article, Prabhupada praised the devotee especially Shamashundar and Jayananda, for constructing an attractive car and holding such a successful festival. Then Prabhupada began to talk of other success within his movement. He had heard reports that in San Francisco, Tamal Krishna had organized the devotees to go out and chant Hare Krishna every day, that in one day they had sold 100 copies of Back to Godhead. Devotees in New York and Boston, he said, were also going out and chanting, distributing magazines, and collecting as much as $40 in a day. He told the disciples gathered in his room they should all expect to perform public kirtan in the important cities of the world. Taking mrindagas and kartals, they could perform kirtan anywhere and get the blessings of Lord Chaitanya. In this way, their numbers would increase. Prabhupada told them, if you want to live alone in a secluded place and practice yoga for your own personal advantage, that is very good. But if you want to help others by spreading Krishna consciousness, that is far better. Prabhupada said that although a Krishna conscious person is not anxious on his own behalf, he is anxious for those who are not Krishna conscious. The mass of people who simply engage in sense gratification within a civilization of illusion. Quoting the great Acharya Jiva Goswami, Prabhupada said that a devotee who chooses to sit in Vrindavan and chant Hare Krishna should make only 1 or 2 disciples. But a missionary who preach Krishna consciousness all over the world should make as many disciples as possible. So you are being initiated, Prabhupada addressed the devotees in his room. Therefore, you should make it your responsibility and duty to spread this message, to follow the principles strictly and become a pure Vaishnava and preach all over the world. All over the world. Don't worry about where you will sleep or eat. Krishna will see all these things. You simply have to become sincere in service. That's all. Just be sincere. Govinda Dasi raised her hand. Prabhupada, she asked, what does it mean exactly to surrender? Surrender, Prabhupada replied, is to know that I'm nothing. As Prabhupada spoke, Govinda Dasi, accustomed to taking dictation, wrote down the answer, while other devotees, some seated on the floor on Prabhupada's desk, and some standing in the doorway, listened attentively. I should know, Prabhupada continued, I'm less than the stool of a hawk, and Krishna, you're everything. That is very difficult. We can find millions of Isaac Newtons and Einsteins, but one very rare soul might be surrendered to Krishna, because it's very difficult. So as long as you are thinking that he is more learned than me, I am more learned than him, that is material. You must know that you are nothing and surrender. A new boy who had been attending Srila Prabhupada's classes asked, why is that one time I feel this way, like you say surrender, but the other times I forget? Prabhupada, that is Maya. That is our battle with Maya. We are in Maya's kingdom, so we have to fight. It's like an ocean, birth and death. There are so many universes, so many species of life, and we are transmigrating, birth after birth. It is like you are standing on the edge of a boat, and just little show, you may fall into the ocean. Then you do not know where you're going here or there. So it's like that. If you want to keep back even 1% to surrender all, but 1%, then you have to stay with fear. Krishna is so strict. If you have any desire for material enjoyment, you have to remain. Just 1% may take millions of years. So you have to surrender everything. Krishna consciousness is already there within you, within everyone, but it has to be invoked. It's like a match. If you rub it, fire comes out. And the rubbing process is chanting. So we have to inject Krishna consciousness into the ear, and we have to go on injecting. Wherever you go, you have to chant without any motive. Gaurasundra brought in a plate of cut fruit, which Srila Prabhupada distributed to each person. It was late. Prabhupada continued speaking. People want to go on asking God for bread, but as soon as there is bread elsewhere, they won't go to church. If you teach people to love God, then they will never forget. Prabhupada smiled. Finally, the devotees left him satisfied. They would see him in the temple in the morning.
Can you just pause for a while?
Yeah.
Okay. We see here in this particular section that Srila Prabhupada, being a world acharya, was nevertheless very personal in his dealings with his disciples. He did not create a sense of nervousness or anxiety in his disciples. He created a sense of strength, calmness, and happiness in his followers. So he was very accessible in the sense that he liked to interact with his disciples. Now, this is something very extraordinary because Prabhupada came from a very distinguished background and came from a very cultured background. But he was dealing with a group of people who were from very wild backgrounds, at least several of them. But Srila Prabhupada liked their sincerity. He very much liked their sincerity. He was very fond of it. So he was also fond of spending time with his disciples. So that is his kindness, that is his compassion. So sometimes, I remember many years ago, I heard one senior Prabhupada disciples quoting that once when one Gaudiya Mutt from one of Prabhupada's godbrothers came, he remarked that, oh, the people of that place are so fallen. I could have never imagined to mingle with them. But Srila Prabhupada did exactly that because he was fully surrendered to the mission of his spiritual master. He was not interested in personal likes and dislikes. Like we saw how he responds to, I think, was it Govindadasi, where we read that he writes a letter, right? He writes a letter. Uh,
It's a letter to the immigration officer,
no, he wrote to Brahmananda.
Brahmananda.
Yeah. So where he says, I want to see them. Anyway, I'm not after respectful compliments by the public, but I'm concerned more about my disciples. I want to see them quite able to preach the sublime doctrine of Krishna consciousness, and therefore I wish to stay. Otherwise, I'm not attracted for any place, either hell or heaven. Like when Prabhupada was sent, Prabhupada, when he went to London and the reporters asked him, do you have a conception of hell in your system and in your philosophy? Prabhupada said, yes, London is hell. He was in London at that time. So it's always raining and whatever. Anyway, the point is that Prabhupada, whichever places he liked or disliked, that was not his main. That was it was irrelevant to him. His main purpose was wherever there is a sincere soul who wants to hear about Krishna consciousness, he is willing to spend time with them and make them Krishna conscious. So we see here how Prabhupada is not motivated by any particular idea. Like he is not thinking that I need to preach only to the elite class of people, I need to do something. He is not making any plans. He is very spontaneous to react to whatever Krishna provides him with. Okay, he's not getting permanent residency in America. This is what Prabhupada wants. This is what Krishna wants me. Okay, he's not giving me. Okay, I'll go to London. So he is very spontaneous about his actions in Krishna consciousness. These are not some pre-planned and strategic plans and nothing. What does Krishna want? Because all our strategic plans are very tiny when compared to what Krishna can plan. So Prabhupada was always dependent on Krishna's plan. So he would keep his ears and eyes open, and whatever Krishna provides, he would just mold his life according to those plans. As Prabhupada wrote when he reached the shores of America, he wrote, I'm a puppet in your hands. He prays to the Lord. Please dance, make me dance as you like, make me dance as you like, make me dance as you like. So that was Prabhupada's mood when not, I mean, that is his mood and his behavior, his actions, everything were fully aligned with that. And see, we see how Prabhupada was very enthusiastic about his books being printed. He considered that the most important instruction from his spiritual master to print books. So he was very focused on that aspect of printing books to spread Krishna consciousness in the Western world. Especially that was the instruction he got to preach to the English-speaking people. And to preach to the English-speaking people, the best method is to write books in English. And we also saw the episode where Prabhupada behaved just like any one of them, although he was very transcendental. Just like Satsarup Maharaj earlier, he writes about Rath Yatra, and Prabhupada was thinking about how Lord Caitanya would say out of ecstasy in front of the Ratha carts. Rath Yatra is just coming up in about a week's time. Jagannath Puri Rath Yatra is coming up in about a week's time. So Prabhupada would always, Prabhupada would be thinking of how Lord Chaitanya is ecstasy, would not even would not even utter Lord Jagannath's name fully. He would say jug, 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 jug. So, what is it? It is actually Jaga Jaga Mumu Mumu Piri Piri, something like that. You can see Chaitanya Charitamrita. There it says Jaga Gaga Mumu Mumu Piri Piri. That's what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says out of his ecstasy when he sees Lord Jagannath. So this is the state of consciousness that Srila Prabhupada is in, and the state of consciousness of his followers obviously is nowhere compared to his state of consciousness. But yet he likes to be with them. What an act of kindness. As one professor had remarked that, I don't recollect who it was it Harvey Cox or Joseph O'Connell? Anyway, one of the professors had, or Larry Shin, anyway, one of them had remarked that what an act of kindness to be living in the Bowery in New York amidst people from the most, not most, whatever, from a very degraded background. It's like the slum of America. But Prabhupada chose to be there. He chose to live with them. He chose to eat with them. He chose to talk to them. He chose to just be with them. And we see this is the heart of a pure devotee. He does not go by the material designations of a person. Panditaha, Samadarshana. So Prabhupada was a walking Pandita. He knew how to identify sincerity in someone's heart, and he also knew how to fan that spark into a raging fire. That's what Srila Prabhupada did. And nevertheless, we also see that Prabhupada in the process was not all about a sentimental, it's all about love. No, Prabhupada is very clear. It's all about discipline. Prabhupada said, the disciple means discipline. So while he was very friendly, he also taught everyone a very disciplined lifestyle in Krishna consciousness, sadhana bhakti. Not just a disciplined lifestyle, but a life of discipline and a life of generosity. Just like he had demonstrated that generosity, he wanted his disciples also to demonstrate that generosity by taking Krishna consciousness around the whole world. And we see how these different devotees, of course, in the sense that discipline, in the sense I was referring to the incident where he chastises Govindadasi. although she is excellent. But still, whenever she made a mistake, Prabhupada would chastise her for her own good. And how Prabhupada he taught everything. In fact, how he was annoyed with the uncleanliness rather, because he saw tissues lying around in Gaurasundar and Govindadasi's room. We also saw how Prabhupada made Krishnadas eat 6 chapatis so that he puts on some weight. We saw how Prabhupada also got engaged in the chase to catch the rat. Finally, they caught, and then I think Harinam caught it and let them loose finally outside the apartment. And Prabhupada remarks how cockroaches and rats, because of their attachment, they take birth in the same house. And then later on, again, when the rat comes to take some prasadam remnants from the floor, Prabhupada remarks that this rat must have been a devotee in his past life. So therefore, it is coming to take the remnants. Of course, this rat is also very fortunate. Even come into the presence of a great personality, of a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada. Actually, whatever you read so has got so many different things happening. You have the San Francisco Rath Yatra, and Prabhupada compliments Shyamasundar and Jayananda Prabhu is very happy when he sees that. And finally, the last point which I wanted to make was that how this last two things which we dealt with, Govindadasi asking, what does surrender mean? And Prabhupada replies, surrender is to know that I am nothing. I am less than the stool of a hog. In Krishna, you are everything. This is very difficult. We can find millions of Isaac Newtons and Einsteins, but one very rare soul might be surrendered to Krishna. So this is a very important point that Prabhupada teaches. And also later on, he says about how we have to have, if you want to keep back even 1%, to surrender all but 1%, then you have to stay here. Krishna is so strict. If you have any desire for material enjoyment, you have to remain. Just 1% may take 1% may take millions of years. So you have to surrender everything. Now, then we could also say that, okay, Prabhupada did say that first he said you have to be 100% perfect to go back to Godhead. Then he brought it down to 90. Then he brought it down to 70. Then he brought it down to, 90, 80, finally brought it down to 70. And they said no more. That is not referring to holding back 1%. If after giving 100%, you have not reached 100% perfection, that is what is being referred to. It is not about holding back 1%. It's not about holding back 30%. We cannot hold back anything. We have to give everything to Krishna. But in the process of giving everything, if we have not reached the level of perfection, 100% level of perfection, even if you have reached 70%, then because Srila Prabhupada has authorized it, he has given that kripa. So ours is a process of sadhana and kripa. Even if you have not reached 100, still there is that kripa element which Prabhupada has bestowed upon his followers. Reach at least 70%. Then you're going back to God. Now 70%, if you look at the scale of Shraddha to Prema, it is somewhere between Ruchi and Asakti. Anyway, so these are some thoughts which I want to share. I would like to hear if others have some reflections or comments or questions about what we did so far. Looks like there are no comments or questions at this stage. Okay, so we'll continue. we'll come back to comments and questions a little later. Please go ahead. Prabhu.
Montreal Temple, established now for a year and a half, occupied a former bowling alley on the third floor of a building near McGill University. Although the gutters on the either side of the 8 bowling lanes had been filled with wood, thus creating a smooth, level floor, the 8 hardwood lanes were still prominent. An altar and Vyasasan stood against one wall, and a temporary wall partitioned off the men's quarters. There was also a kitchen and separate quarters for the women. With difficulty, Prabhupada would daily climb the 2 flights of stairs and enter the spacious temple room. One day after his arrival in Montreal, several devotees had carried him up the stairs in a palanquin, but the winding staircase made that too difficult to do daily, so Prabhupada chose to walk. The original Montreal devotees was Janardana, a Canadian attending McGill University. Janardana wore a beard and long hair even after his initiation and lived in an apartment with his wife, who was staunchly opposed to Krishna consciousness. Acknowledging Janardana as an intellectual, Prabhupada had written him long letters answering his philosophical doubts and requesting that he write essays and books on Krishna consciousness. When the temple had first opened, the McGill Daily had given Janardana a full page to introduce Swami Bhaktivedanta and Krishna consciousness. The headlines had read, Mind Expansion Under Spiritual Guidance. Montreal's French daily newspaper, Les Nouveaux Midi, and interviewed Janardana and published an article. They claim that the Hindu god Krishna is the father of Christ and that the inhabitants of the moon are invisible. About a dozen members had joined the Montreal temple, but so far they had done little to spread Krishna consciousness in Montreal. They had spent most of their energy maintaining themselves spiritually and financially. Although they had held some public kirtans at the 1967 World's Fair, mostly they had concentrated on transforming the bowling alley, cleaning, cooking for Krishna, and meeting together for classes in kirtan. When Srila Prabhupada saw Janardana's academic studies distracting him from temple management, he asked Janardana to appoint a temple commander. One night when Prabhupada came to the temple for his lecture, as soon as he sat on the Vyasasan, he looked out to Janardana and asked, So have you found a temple commander yet? Oh no, Janardana replied, not yet. Prabhupada then turned toward the altar and beheld the deities. That's all right, he said. Lord Jagannath is the temple commander, we are his servants. One evening in the temple, as Prabhupada concluded his lecture about Prahlad Maharaj, he asked if there were any questions. Himavati, one of the woman disciples, raised her hand. Prabhupada, yes, Himavati. Prahlad Maharaj was such a great devotee that he said nothing is mine. But then why does he say, my God? How could God become his? Why does he say that? Prabhupada, then what shall he say? Himavati, I don't understand how can he say it. If you understand nothing belongs to you, then how can you say God is mine? Prabhupada, Krishna is the Lord of everyone. Therefore, everyone can say, my Lord. That does not mean if somebody says, my Lord, God becomes monopolized. You're speaking on the platform of monopolizing mind. But God is never monopolized. He is everyone's. So everyone has the right to say, my God, my Lord. In the material sense, when I say it's my wife, that means she is not any other's wife. But God is not like that. I can say my God, but you can also say my God. He can say my God, everyone can say, my God, that is the absolute mind. Krishna says, all these living creatures are my parts and parcels. Mama vimso mama means my. So why the living creatures shall not say my God? Do you follow? Krishna says, you are mine. So why shall I not say, Krishna, you are mine? Your husband says, you are mine. Why shall you not say to him, you are mine? But don't take it in the material sense. In material sense, as soon as I say this is mine, then it belongs to no one else. It is my property. But Krishna is not like that. So you can say, Krishna is mine, there is no harm. Rather, if anyone wants to possess something as his, that position should be Krishna's. That is the ultimate conception of mind. That is perfection of the word mind. So this is quite nice, quite fit. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, he is mine and I am his, Krishna says. So this is not wrong. And what is your idea? That because everything belongs to Krishna, therefore I shall not say mine. That is your idea. Hemavati, I didn't understand this, that Krishna is the Lord. So my Lord is everyone else's Lord. Prabhupada, yes. Hemavati, he's the controller and that's why he's mine. Prabhupada, he's mine, he's yours, everyone's, that's all. Hemavati, I can understand. Prabhupada, that's all. Rukumani, I feel so far away from you. You know when you're not here. Prabhupada, what is that? I can't follow. Janardana, she's saying she felt so far away from you when you're not here. Prabhupada, oh, that you should not think. There are two conceptions, the physical conception and the vibration conception. Physical conception is temporary. The vibration conception is eternal. Just like we are relishing the vibration of Krishna's teaching. So my vibration is also present. As soon as we chant Hare Krishna or chant Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavad, so Krishna is present immediately by vibration. It's absolute. Therefore, vibration is more important than physical presence. When you feel separation from your spiritual master, you just try to remember his words and his instructions, and you will not feel separation. You will feel like he is with you. So, we should associate by the vibration, not by the physical presence. That is real association. Sabdat anavritti, by sound. Just like we are touching Krishna immediately by sound. So we should give more stress on the sound vibration, either of Krishna or of the spiritual master. Then we will feel happy and no separation. When Krishna departed from this world at that time, Arjuna was overwhelmed with sorrow and he began to remember the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. Then he was pacified. Immediately, he began to remember the teaching which was taught to him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and he was pacified. Krishna was his constant friend. So when the Lord went to his abode, Arjuna was feeling overwhelmed, but he began to remember his teachings. So whenever he shall feel separation, the best thing is to remember the teachings. Then it will be very nice. Is that clear? Rukumani, yes. One of the girls asked Prabhupada, will you be our father eternally? Will you always be our spiritual master eternally? Jokingly, Prabhupada said, yes, I think so. Then he quoted a verse, Chakdwana dilo ye janmi janmi Prabhu se. But he said, janmi janmi Pita se. The one who has opened my eyes is my father life after life. Prabhupada was concerned about the weak financial condition of the Montreal temple. Although some of the devotees were employed, their work wasn't very auspicious. One disciple had a job at the No Sax Spring Factory, which Prabhupada called Ugra Karma, bitter, unwholesome labor. When Nanda Kishore told Prabhupada about his job as a bus boy in a restaurant, Prabhupada replied, oh, a blind uncle. Nanda Kishore looked puzzled. Prabhupada told him the story of a boy who had no uncle. One day a blind man came to the boy's home and said, I will be your uncle. Well, the boy replied, a blind uncle is better than no uncle. But when Nanda Kishore told Prabhupada the details of his work, then he was something cooking meat. Prabhupada remarked, "Oh, but not so blind." The question of financing the Montreal temple puzzled Prabhupada, and he carefully analyzed the situation. There were two parts of Krishna consciousness, he said. One of those who were renounced, eating fruits from the trees and living in caves, and other for those who were married and honestly employed like Krishna's friend Arjuna. Both parts were good, but the question for Prabhupada was which path his disciples should take. If they attempted to take the path of ascetic like Sukadev Goswami, they would probably remain hippies. And Prabhupada wanted many big centers with respectable guests coming to take prasadam. Yet, if to maintain such temples, the devotees had to engage in Ugra Karma, then who would preach? It was a puzzle. I have either to stop this Brahminical system, Prabhupada said, or I have to have Brahmanas work. He thought of starting his own business. He had a little capital and there was organization. Then he thought of enlisting the support of the Indians in Montreal. Montreal had a large Indian community and families were already attending the Sunday feast at the temple. Of those who came forward to meet Prabhupada, the most promising was young Gopal Khanna, a business major at McGill University. Although raised in an Orthodox Hindu family, Gopal knew little of the Vaishnava philosophy. The day before Srila Prabhupada arrived in Montreal, Gopal had received an invitation card from a devotee because for the past year, Gopal had been seriously wanting to understand God. He had been interested in his spiritual search. He had been attending service at a Hindu temple in Toronto, as well as visiting various other churches and temples. He had given up meat eating and smoking. On coming to the temple and seeing the excitement of the devotees in preparing for Prabhupada's arrival, Gopal had asked to help, so one of the devotees had instructed him to help clean Prabhupada's apartment. Prabhupada had taken an interest in Gopal, who, although he had never met a sadhu before and didn't know what to think at first, respected Prabhupada. A friend of Gopal's, Mr. Mukherjee from Calcutta, also began attending Prabhupada's lectures. Mr. Mukherjee, who claimed to have spiritual knowledge, told Gopal that although he had touched the feet of many Indian sadhus throughout India, never had he met anyone as saintly as Prabhupada. Gopal took his friend's endorsement of Prabhupada very seriously, and soon he was attending all the lectures in the temple and chanting Hare Krishna on his beats, acting like a regular devotee. He would usually be the only Indian to remain through the kirtan and lecture in the temple. Then afterwards, he would stay and have hot milk with the devotees, return home around 9:30. Associating with the devotees and being of the same age as they, Gopal automatically included himself among the intimate disciples who regularly visited Prabhupada at his apartment. Prabhupada asked Gopal about his family and background and in India and encouraged him to take up Krishna consciousness. When Gopal told Prabhupada that he had been chanting Om, Prabhupada explained that by itself Om was incomplete. If we wanted to chant Om, Prabhupada said we should chant Om Krishna. One night, Gopal was present and Prabhupada discussed the financial problem of the Montreal temple. Although the temple rent was only 150 and expenses were minimal, the devotees were struggling. At one point in the discussion, Prabhupada turned to Gopal and asked, "So Gopal, what is your solution to this financial problem?" Guessing that Prabhupada might be hinting for him to contribute money, Gopal said he didn't have a solution. Prabhupada had lectured at a nearby Christian school, and Gopal and his friend Mukherjee attended. When, after the kirtan and lecture, Prabhupada asked if there were any question, Mukherjee raised his hand, stood up, and to the shock of the devotees, began insulting Prabhupada. It is not a fact that Krishna is the Supreme Personality Godhead, Mr. Mukherjee said, before the half filled with Christian students and ministers. You should not speak like this in a church. Why do you say that Krishna is the supreme and that we should surrender to him? Prabhupada remained calm, although the attending devotees looked furiously at Mr. Mukherjee, could barely restrain themselves. Prabhupada didn't even speak. He simply called on someone else in the audience and allowed the unpleasant event to pass. Some days later, Prabhupada asked Gopal about Mr. Mukherjee, who hadn't come by recently. To Gopal's surprise, Prabhupada asked to see Mukherjee again. Gopal, considering Mukherjee too envious and blasphemous, advised Prabhupada against him. No, it does not matter, Prabhupada said. I must have done something against him in a past life, and now he has taken his revenge. Please call him. Gradually, some of the Indian devotees responded to Prabhupada and began to give money to support the temple. Most of them, however, were reluctant to spend money or time apart from their careers and families. Indian culture, Prabhupada said, had completely fallen due partly to foreign invasion into India and partly to Indian leaders madly abandoning their original culture in favor of Western materialism. But still, Prabhupada told the devotees, if there is any civilization left anywhere, it is in India. In India, they are all originally Krishna conscious, and without chanting and taking prasadam, their material covering can be removed. Prabhupada compared modern-day Indian civilization to a dead elephant, an elephant in such a valuable creature that even when dead, because of its tusk and hide, it remains almost as valuable as when alive and working. Similarly, although the Indian culture was practically dead, India still had a great potential. Most Indians in the villages still retained a simple faith that their present suffering was due to karma of their past lives and that they would have to transmigrate to another body in their next life. That basic transcendental knowledge commonly understood by the Indian masses was unknown in the West even to the most sophisticated and advanced members of society. But Prabhupada was sorry to see the Indians in West abandoning their piety and taking the cheap life of sense gratification. He compared the Indian immigrants to the new crows. When crows eat garbage after a while, they are full. But if a new crow arrives, he becomes especially eager. Similarly, many Indians newly arrived in the West were more eager for material advancement than the Westerners. Yet, despite Prabhupada's criticism of Indians, whenever he met anyone of Indian birth in the temple, in his room, or elsewhere, he seemed to become especially sympathetic and friendly, conversing them in Hindi or Bengali as if talking with old familiar friends. Janardana was concerned about presenting Krishna conscious to Montreal's main religious contingent, the Catholics, because he came from a French-Canadian Catholic family. Janardana thought Prabhupada and his disciples should learn to present Krishna consciousness in terms of biblical teaching. It was possible, Prabhupada agreed, but he would require great expertise. It would be better, he said, to stress the universal non-sectarian nature of Krishna consciousness. Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and all the other religions had some idea of God, though not so much realization of pure love for God. Krishna consciousness, however, was like a postgraduate study for persons of all religion. Prabhupada requested his disciples not to divert their attention to criticizing the Christian or any other sectarian faith. Rather, they should simply preach Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. When Sivananda and Nanda Kishora brought an Indian Christian to Prabhupada's apartment, Prabhupada demonstrated the art of preaching to a committed follower of a sectarian religious faith. We don't say you have to be this religion or that, Prabhupada told the man. The real test of religion is how one is awakening his dormant love for God. Prabhupada went on, without attacking the man's religious affiliation, to describe the degradation of Kali Yuga. At the present moment, he said, never mind whether one is Christian, Hindu, Jew, or Muslim. Most people are godless and don't care for God. They simply take an official stand. But actually, in the depth of their heart, they have no idea what God is. If a Christian believes in God, let him love God more prominently than matter. The man agreed. Janardana took Prabhupada to see some of the great cathedrals in Montreal. Entering the spacious Notre Dame, Prabhupada said, yes, this is worship of God as Lord Narayana in awe and reverence. The church tour impressed Srila Prabhupada, and the next day he revealed his thought in a letter to Anirudh. Yesterday, Janardhan took me to a nice church here called Notre Dame, a very nice wooden structural workmanship with a colorful figures and windows decorated with nicely painted pictures of the crucifixion of Lord Jesus Christ. Everything was grotesque. Generally, the Roman Catholic religion depends on this crucifixion incident in the life of Lord Jesus Christ. But I think depiction of this incident simply stimulates the tensions of differences of opinion and differences of religious principles between Jews and Christians. My idea is that if simply by narrating the crucifixion incident of Lord Jesus Christ, the Roman Catholic religion can spread to such a wide areas of world, how much there is great potency of spreading our Krishna consciousness by depicting many hundreds and thousands of such incidents in different appearances of the incarnations of Lord Krishna. Prabhupada and Janardhan visited another church which displayed the relics of a saint who had been adept at healing. Walking through the exhibition of the saint's clothing, desk, bed, and personal effect, Prabhupada was unimpressed. Just see, he said, they are adoring him for healing bodies. They are now dead, but they do not take interest in the healing of a soul in his eternal situation. Questions about Christ and the Bible often arose after Prabhupada's classes in the temple. One night, Prabhupada explained that even the most learned man studies in terms of the body only. Although a person may have many PhDs and may be talking philosophy, when he's asked, do you know what the soul is? He will stop. A man raised his hand. I have here a Holy Bible, he began. Yes, Prabhupada acknowledged. So the Holy Bible is also written by the Holy Spirit of mankind. Should we believe in the Bible or not? You can say it is written by mankind, but so far as I know, those who wrote with revelation, the Holy Spirit. Yes, Prabhupada said, therefore you should read. Otherwise, if a man writes a book on his own, he will write on his own experience and it will be imperfect. You are speaking about man only knowing the body. What about the body of Christ? Body of Christ is not ordinary body, Prabhupada said. That is spiritual body. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Sambhavami Atma Mayaya. So this is a very subtle point. One has to understand that when God comes, or God's Son comes, or God's representative comes, they do not accept a body like us. They have their spiritual body. Krishna means Christ. The man replied, he is the whole spirit. So we are also in the body of man. That is the body of God. No, Prabhupada replied. The body of man is not exactly the body of God. With God, there is no difference between the body and the soul because he is all spiritual. Just like if you have a golden body and a golden soul, then there is no difference between the soul and the body. But in our case, as we are spirit soul, but the body is material. Therefore, I am different from this body. But when we are liberated, we get a spiritual body like Krishna's. At the present moment, there is a difference between our body and soul. Therefore, as soon as a soul goes away from the body being matter, dust thou art, dust thou beset, mixes with the matter, and the soul takes another body. The whole problem is that we have to stop repetition or migration from one material body to another material body. That is the highest perfection of life. During Prabhupada's stay in Montreal, Janardhan showed him several news items concerning Pope Paul VI. The Pope was staunchly supporting the Catholic stand against abortion, despite a large protest movement within the church. Prabhupada admired the Pope for upholding the scripture, even though millions of Catholics didn't. He decided to write him. He had tried such things before writing to Gandhi, writing to Nehru. In the same spirit, he dictated a letter one morning and sent it to the Vatican. In his letter, Prabhupada explained his personal background and mission. He then defined love of God as it is explained in Srimad Bhagavatam and stated that the human life is especially meant for learning to love God. Noting that people were mostly interested in sense gratification, Prabhupada remarked, "This tendency is very much deteriorating. Because Your Holiness is the head of a great religious sect, I think we should meet together and chalk out a program for cooperation." Prabhupada went on to describe some of the symptoms of society as degradation, including pro-abortion movement within the Catholic faith. I understand it from a reliable source, Prabhupada wrote, that people are trying to get Your Holiness sanction for a contraceptive method, which is certainly against any religion of the world. In the Hindu religion, such contraceptive method by abortion is considered equivalent to murder. Prabhupada said the same degradation was affecting India, and he suggested that the guardians of society treat this situation as a very serious one. Prabhupada closed his letter. If you think that a meeting with you will be beneficial for the human society at large, I shall be very much pleased if Your Holiness will grant me an interview. Janardhan mixed with many liberal academic religionists interested in ecumenical aspects of religion, and he wanted to introduce Prabhupada to these scholars of various faiths. He arranged a private get-together at a friend's house, and Prabhupada very willingly went and spoke about Krishna consciousness. The next day, he summarized his experience in a letter to Satsru. Yes, I'm getting a good opportunities to meet here several learned scholars. Last night, we had a meeting in the house of Mr. Abdul Rabi, and there were some university professors and a Dr. Abbott, Dr. Macmillan, and many others. Two clergymen were with their wives. One father, Len Lice, was without a wife. So there was a very good discussion, and by the grace of Krishna, I was able to give them some impression of this philosophy that is nicer than anything. Professor Abdul is a Mohammedan, and he is writing a thesis of Sufi religion, and he was also impressed. Unfortunately, I had to eat there, but I accepted little fruits only while they were eating all sorts of nonsense, but at least they did not drink. We were the only two persons, Janardhan and myself, who avoided all kinds of nonsense. Prabhupada attended more formal.
Bro, I think we can stop there for this thing. And few things that we can observe here is that Prabhupada was not interested in converting people of other denominations or faith into Krishna consciousness. If someone wanted to take up Krishna consciousness, he was always happy. But his strategy was to make them understand the commonness and at the same time the distinction between them and us. So Prabhupada was, of course, he emphasized the commonness, but in the process of explaining the philosophy, he would also explain about our philosophy. So that is a strategy which Prabhupada adopted. And he was someone who would never lose an opportunity to, for example, collaborate with the Pope. He writes to the Pope, as we saw here, that specific words was that because your holiness is the head of a great religious sect, I think we should meet together and chalk out a program of cooperation, which means that Prabhupada had a certain mission to transform the whole world. And whoever in any way could contribute to that transformation, Prabhupada was willing to explore an arrangement for cooperation. So that is the idea here. And we saw earlier how Prabhupada gives the example of the culture of India being, current state of the culture of India being like the dead elephant, where even the dead elephant is valuable. So even though the culture had died, but still the dead culture also has certain value. This is during the 1960, late 1960s, 1970. But today we are going closer and closer and closer. Here Prabhupada is speaking closer to Western civilization. It is very ironic that in a country which is extremely what do you say, liberal, the Supreme Court has, I don't know the details of it, but I know that whether it's applicable to all states or not, but the Supreme Court in America passed a judgment that to ban abortions. But in India, the right to abort a baby has now been increased from the previous whatever some months to even up to 8th month, something like that. So in that sense, it's complete nonsense. Although so Prabhupada says dead elephant, the culture is dead. So there are many ways in which the culture has further deteriorated. And when Prabhupada speaks about Vedic culture, he's not talking about some nationalism and things like, or political things like. He's talking about the practice of life or molding of life in such a way to attain the ultimate goal of life. That is what Prabhupada is referring to as culture. Everything was geared towards such a ideal, or in fact, such a goal. We see Prabhupada's interactions with Gopal Krishna Maharaj, and how he gradually encouraged him to participate more and more in the Krishna consciousness movement. And Prabhupada also, when he heard that some of the devotees were working, like Nanda Kishore told Prabhupada about the details of the work, they're sometimes cooking meat. Prabhupada said, but not so blind. Prabhupada is saying, blind uncle is better than no uncle. But then when he heard about this, he said, but not so blind. No. So, and when Prabhupada is asked the question, whether will you be our spiritual master eternally, Prabhupada jokes and says, yes, I think so. We see how Prabhupada asks Janardhan about uh, having a temple commander for the Montreal temple, because he saw that Janardhan being engaged in this work was not able to give his full attention to the temple. So, but when he said, when he asks him, have you found anyone yet? And he replies, no, not yet. Prabhupada says, okay, so Jagannath will be the temple commander. Okay, on that note, I'll stop here and open up for reflections, questions, comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you for a wonderful class. Prabhu, I have a general question. Maybe you can help me with this understanding.
Prabhu, I think your voice is, we're not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Sorry, I had my headphones on because I was doing service at the time. So, you can hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you clearly now. Yeah.
Okay. So, just a general question, just to help my understanding. I've read in Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada articulated quite great at length. I can't remember where it was now, but it is in the Bhagavatam, one of the purports, with the descriptions of Jainism being bogus and how this I've forgotten the
Rishabhadev was the original. Yeah, correct.
Now, I've also seen references in Bhavishya Puran about how similarly Muhammad is predicted to be a charlatan who will come and create this religion called Islam. Or I think if it refers to it as something else, but it is a pretty much a direct reflection or direct description of Islam. So I'm just trying to square this off against how Srila Prabhupada's ready to criticize Rishabdev, but he's very coy about not criticizing Islam, even though the Bhavishya Puran states that it is a religion that will come, which is a false religion, or it is a charlatan religion, or something like that. I can't remember the exact reference, but could you help me out with that?
I'm hearing this for the first time. Anyway, I have something to say. Okay, please go ahead.
No, that was it. I was just wanting some clarification on. I mean, Srila Prabhupada is clearly very careful and diplomatic about how he deals with other religions, but not so with Jainism. So,
as far as Bhavishya Puran speaking about Islam, I've not come across this anywhere. But what we do follow is the Mahajanas. So Prabhupada said, my spiritual master, I think we read this in the Lilamrita, or I don't know if in the other biographies. But Prabhupada, spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explicitly said that both Jesus and Muhammad are empowered incarnations of God. Shakti Avesha avatars. He specifically said that. And it's documented also, Prabhupada saying it. So, yeah. So first of all, I don't know the Puranic versions that exist today. Some of them, like this, whether they are authentic or not, because there is what to speak of Bhavishya Purana. The Mahabharata itself is highly tampered. So Mahabharata. So Madhvacharya writes a work called Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya. Nirnaya means how to decide. Tatparya means how to understand the conclusions of the Mahabharata. So the Mahabharata was highly tampered. So therefore, Madhvacharya had to write the Mahabharata Tatparya Nirnaya on the order of Vyasa himself, because Vyasa Madhvacharya's spiritual master is Vyasa, and Vyasa is the writer of the Mahabharata actually. So that's the very nature of Kali Yuga, that many things can be tampered with. So I mean, I doubt the reliability of the Bhavishya Purana's version which you're talking about, considering the fact that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur referred to both Christ and Prophet Muhammad as Shakti Avesha avatars.
thank you, Prabhu. It wasn't meant to be a deep philosophical argument to either way. I was just wondering whether there was any foundation as to how Prabhupada deals with the so you said that is in terms of Acharya's statements. So yeah, no, that's fine. Thank you.
So whether the original teachings have been presented as they are, that is a debatable thing. For example, Prabhupada said, okay, Jesus says, do not kill. So, but why are you killing animals? So like that, whether Prophet's Muhammad's teachings are being followed properly now, that's another question. So I think when Prabhupada criticizes, not I think, it is a fact when Prabhupada criticizes Jainism, he is not criticizing Rishabhadev or whatever the original, but he's criticizing the present day interpretations or some of the forms of interpretation that exist in the present day. Yes.
Prabhuji, I just wanted to know whether there will be class next week because it's the Rath Yatra day, Prabhuji. So we are having Rath Yatra. I just wanted to clarify.
Pardon? You're saying that because of Rath Yatra?
Yes, do we have class next week? Because
like Sunday is Rath Yatra.
yeah, Rath Yatra day. Next Sunday is Rath Yatra day.
If it is Rath Yatra day, the next Sunday is Rath Yatra. It's the 7th.
Yes,
no?
Yes, Prabhuji. So the 7th is Sunday. Yeah,
6th.
Yes, Prabhuji. No, 7th is Sunday. 7th Sunday Rath Yatra, Prabhuji.
Oh yeah. 7th is Sunday. Okay. Yeah, we won't have class next week. So thank you for asking the question. We'll resume again on day after that. Yes. I mean, I always thought that Sunday was 6th. Thank you for bringing it. Okay, so if there are no further reflections or comments or questions, we'll close for today and resume the Sunday after next. Thank you all very much for joining. As Krishna Chandra Prabhu rightly noted a couple of classes ago, this section of the Leelamrita is very, very interesting because Sasur Maharaj seems to be writing this in a manner directed for a devotee audience. Somehow there is a difference in flavor. This seems more intimate than the general Leelamrita. Although the general Leelamrita also is very finely written, but this particular section or this particular volume gives us a closer access to Srila Prabhupada. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya vicha paridanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki